Hello and welcome to the King Heroes Journey podcast. My name is Beth Martins. I'm super excited to have Dr. Garrett Smith back on today to talk about everything women's health. They wore pink for the occasion. And Garrett, I see you are in the back room. You can just give me a thumbs up anytime that you're ready to come on. I'm going to get Rockfin going since that's all ready. And if anyone would like to jump on Rockfin, I am going to share a link. Just 1 second. Give me 1 minute here. All right, here we go. So are you all ready, Garrett? He's got a big smile on his face. I'll take that as a yes. Hello, Garrett. Welcome. Nice to see you.
Hello again. Nice to be back.
Yeah, so good. I have been, I always say this these days, down your rabbit hole. I know that sounds a little weird and strange like that, but it's a beautiful thing, right? To move forward. I posted the other day how some of my favorite people out there are able to change their minds based on new information. And to me, this is one of the biggest gifts of how we're actually made and structured, not to be rigid and hold on to every little thing because we said it or we did it or we recommended it, right? That's even the hardest when you've been on the back end telling people to do stuff that you don't even agree with anymore.
Yes, absolutely. Oh yeah, that's happened. There's 3 major times in my professional career where I've had to do an about face and tell patients and clients that, oops, we're not doing that anymore, and I'm sorry, so yeah.
Yeah. And it's painful. I just want to let people know it is painful, but the bigger pain is being out of alignment with yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I know somebody out there who is actually pushing a low vitamin A diet in private, and they're still selling high vitamin A foods like organ meats because they're stuck on the money. And they don't want to give up the income stream, and they're more about face than they are about truth. So, it's a special thing to be willing and able to do it. And I couldn't imagine anything any other way. I couldn't imagine I couldn't live with myself if I was doing things that I didn't agree with and making a living doing something that I didn't agree with. So yeah, it was natural to me. Other people are like, I've gotten a lot of respect for it because people say, yeah, he changed his mind and he had his reasons and he did it, and now people are benefiting from it. And so, yeah.
Yeah, good on you. That's amazing. Yeah, especially where the income is tied. That is such a huge tether. You have huge amounts of invested of money, and having to go back on all that stuff would just seem horrific. But again, the bigger cost to your soul is always going to be there. So yeah. Hello, Idaho girl. Nice to see you. Jackie K, welcome. Come and say hello in the chat if you guys have questions.
Hello to all. Anyway.
Yeah, I do have a list as long as my legs, so we'll see how far we get on it today. The beauty is that I'm far enough into your paradigm and framework that the answer to nearly every question is going to be the same. So women have suffered immeasurably, and it is, honestly, I just started doing a little bit of a list as I emailed my email list, and my grandmother had breast cancer. All of her sisters died of breast cancer. My mom suffered her menopause like crazy, ongoing hot flashes and frustrations, and just on and on. Friends with UTIs. We're going to talk about UTIs. It's in the same general zone as the reproductive system. Menstruation. We'll probably take it on a timeline. Start with menstruation. How many of my girlfriends just every single month? Oh, it's so painful. Oh, I can't do anything. Oh, I'm knocked out. All of this kind of thing. And then pregnancy. Why do all the women, or at least so many of them, get sick? Remember my sister saying she couldn't even put a toothbrush in her mouth without wanting to throw up when she was pregnant. And the pregnancy, or the birth itself, the postpartum, and things after that. So we'll see how far we get. Hopefully I don't keep you too long. If you've got a hard stop of any kind, just let me know.
No, I'll be trying to refer people to, if they want to watch more, to videos on my live stream where I've covered these in great detail, like 2 or 3 hours even. I think I just did an MS one for 4 hours. So yeah, so there's plenty out there. But as you know, it all kind of comes down to the same concepts and principles once you understand it. So
Right. It actually does get simple. And that's what I notice about the truth, right? It's simple and it's consistent across the board. It doesn't not work in certain situations. Therefore, it's likely true. So it's really good. It is one of the things that I'm appreciating about you, that in your live streams, you go through the PubMed articles, disclaimers on PubMed and how to read those and what words to recognize, like homeostasis, and one other one for when there's really
signaling.
a problem. Signaling. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's so interesting and it's so educating. At first, I wasn't able to really take it in. Now I'm noticing my mind is a lot more with you as you go through these articles. And so yeah, it's exciting. I love learning personally. I always feel happier when I'm learning something of value to myself and for sure others. So I would like to introduce you. Before I do that, I just want to let people know that on Thursday, coming up at 1 o'clock the same time, Central Time, Topher Gardner is coming on to talk about spontaneous generation. So that's going to be a really fun discussion. If you're not familiar with him, I recommend his website, BioCharisma. And one last thing is that if you do an archetype quiz at my website, you can find out where you are on the path of purpose. And starting in the new year, I'm doing a series of archetype readings, personal, that I haven't done very often. I don't want to go into the whole woo-woo side of being a reader, but when you learn to recognize patterns in your life and you see them in different areas of your life, then you're really onto it and you're positioned to get clear direction. So I know a lot of people have been thrown off in the last years and we're always just troubleshooting the crap that's coming down at us. And this is a way to set your course straight in a really purposeful way. So stay tuned to that. If you do the archetype quiz at my website, you'll get on my email list and you'll get a chance at one of those spots that are going to be limited for the readings.
I just did mine.
And you just did yours. Yes. Yeah. How fun was that?
It was good. It was good. And it definitely fit where I'm at. And yeah. And it was good. It was very interesting. I've been reading your book and, we had our chat and stuff like that. So I like it so far.
Awesome. Very brave. Very brave. Sometimes men don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole.
That's a big issue with men not wanting to do some of the work that they need to do. Yes, absolutely.
Right.
I've gotten lots of compliments from people of just me diving in and I'm just like an open book and I'm like, okay, this is probably the issue. And they're like, wow, you did it fast. So it's fun for me. I like it. And I wish like even a specific family member of mine is so resistant. He would find every excuse in the book not to do the work. And I'm just like, well, that's I can't do anything else for you then.
Exactly. Free will choice. That's how it goes. But you can be the shining example of it and show people. And then they will either gravitate towards that or they're actually going to pull themselves away. It's polarizing when you grow and get free. So yeah, good on you. So for those of you who are not familiar with Dr. Garrett Smith, he's a licensed naturopathic physician in the state of Arizona. And since starting his medical practice in 2006, he's helped thousands of people to fix their chronic diseases permanently through his focus on correcting vitamin A toxicity, specific nutrient deficiencies, and his paradigm-shifting toxic bile theory, which is more turned into a paradigm in the last little while. He approaches his approach to health. Dr. Smith gets results for his clients that others were unable to previously. In his spare time, he enjoys training in the gym and shooting competitions. I like your Twitter picture, by the way. I sent that to my son just to give you some credibility for him.
I made a joke about that. I was like, some people go to Vegas to gamble, and I go to shoot machine guns. So
there you go.
That picture is. I'm holding a machine gun. It's fun.
There you go. Yeah, my son would just 100% agree with that. Yeah. Did you hear we have a bunch of new bans in Canada? They knocked 364 firearms into the ban list.
Canada is an interesting place these days, isn't it?
Oh my. Yeah. We're thinking real hard about a move to the US, to tell you the truth. So yep, exactly. All right. So let's jump into this. Why do women suffer? Let's talk about menstruation first. and the pain and fatigue and all kinds of things that come up. What I understood as I went along is that menstruation is actually a detox process. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, it is. Well, I mean, it's obviously it's part of the whole fertility process, but the benefit to it is that it is, women have this opportunity every month to get rid of stuff that they could put in there in the menstruation. So yeah, absolutely, it is a big detox process. And then actually, I think this is why certain women, when they get to, let's say, menopause, start suffering a lot, is because now their detox cycle has been removed. So anything they were like living on this detox cycle, and then that disappears, and then they're stuck. And so yeah, so with menstruation, well, we're going to look at this in the 3 cycles of the 3 major hormonal shifts in women's lives, which one would be, puberty and menstruation, and then there would be pregnancy, and then there would be menopause. And the key thing is that to know that during all of these times, I've seen a bunch of blood tests, I've seen hair tests, when these things are happening, for whatever reason, the body is like, the liver is dumping a bunch of toxins. It's when we understand toxic bile theory, they're dumping a bunch of toxins. Some of them are leaking back into the system, and this is why they feel so bad. And as I was starting to learn about this back when I was learning hair analysis from a guy, he was saying that if you can really get kids, boys or girls, less toxic and more mineral sufficient before they hit puberty, he's like, the benefits you give them is immense, because when they go through that initial kind of, it's like a growing of the liver. When they start growing physically, their liver's growing, and they're having all the stress of puberty, and they're having all these new hormones, and their liver's having to deal with these hormones, which your liver processing toxins, you can consider almost to the liver, a hormone is like a toxin. It has to process it. It's going to break it down and get rid of it. So this is why, like, hormone therapies don't stick around forever, why you got to keep taking it every day, because your liver's chopping it up constantly. So with menstruation, with the detox cycle, one way we could think of it is, especially when this hormonal cycle comes around and it starts doing what it does to the liver, and there's this detox process going through, the female reproductive organs. As I say, one of my sayings is, it's a poison on the way in and it's a poison on the way out. So if your body is putting these toxins, these poisons into the menstruation, it's going to affect everything it touches. It doesn't just like go into a neat little ball that's separated from everything and then leave. It's, the term I use a lot is, it's marinating everything. So yes, you are getting rid of some of it, but it's also just soaking into everything. The things you put in there are getting reabsorbed, and vice versa. So a lot of the pain down there, yeah, this is, one of the things we see as we work with people on detox and getting their nutrients right is their pain levels go down and their pain threshold goes way up. It's like pain doesn't affect them as much anymore because they're not as inflamed. Well, if you start putting a bunch of toxins into the female reproductive organs, you're going to have pain. A lot of the vitamin A and the copper toxicity, when that gets stirred up, that's a lot of the fatigue. That's a lot of the irritability, the anxiety, the depression, the trouble sleeping. Like, a lot of these things, these are common threads, especially for women, because sadly, women have their menstrual cycle, but they don't tend to detox as fast as men. Just in a general, it's just the way it is. I didn't make it up. Like, women make less bile than men, which means they are less able to detox. They do have their menstrual cycles, but it doesn't make up for it. A couple days doesn't make up for every day. So a cycle of the month doesn't make up for the whole month. Anyway, but yeah, a lot of the symptoms, vitamin A toxicity, copper toxicity, as they come out. And let me give you another example of how certain things we do can mess us up more. Is a lot of women, they get their cycles. Well, actually, let me back up one more step. Why is this getting worse generation to generation? Why does it seem like, maybe ladies, you knew your grandma, your great grandma, maybe you even heard further back, and they didn't have the problems that that we have today with menstruation, with pregnancy, with menopause. It wasn't as big of a deal. Well, you hand down. This is where the responsibility has to come in. We hand down. I mean, men mainly hand down the damage to their sperm from toxicities and deficiencies. That's, I mean, once men kind of do their thing and then they're kind of out of it. So they hand down whatever's damaged in their contribution. And then what women are toxic in is what that baby is made of and inherits. So like we hand down toxicities and deficiencies to our children through the damage that men do to their own contribution, and then the women with what the babies are basically marinating in. This is what then just so that's what the placenta is for, ladies. It's the placenta is like a third liver. It soaks up tons of toxicity, and it should be discarded. Don't eat it, please. Don't. It's not. You don't want to eat that. That is like about as toxic as it gets. So anyway. Yeah, so we see, so birth control. So let's get into birth control. So women often, I know my ex-wife, as soon as she hit puberty, she had raging cramps. And she was put on birth control, I think, when she was 13, just for the cramps. Like, this is modern medicine's solution, right? You got a problem with your cycle, just stop the cycle. Just, if it's hot, make it cold. If it's cold, make it hot. If it's, dry, make it wet. That's what they do. So if it hurts, make it go away. And I've been over this. I just went over this on a Twitter thread recently. It has been shown since 1975 in research that birth control pills raise vitamin A levels in the blood, and they raise copper levels in the blood. Now, two other things that we know about people is that as people age, their vitamin A levels in the blood go up, and their copper levels in the blood go up. Now, we don't tend to associate aging with positive things, right? It tends to be, we kind of look at it as negative things, as like life gets suckier as you get older. Well, copper goes up as we age, vitamin A goes up as we age. And then we see with birth control, vitamin A goes up and copper goes up. Now, birth control, I mean, and then there's the whole thing of a copper IUD, right? So you can put a piece of copper wiring basically in a woman, and it makes her infertile. And in conventional medicine, they'll actually say that these women are not absorbing copper from this copper wire that's stuck in them at all. And it's just outrageously, I don't know, gaslighting for them to say that. Like, you could actually imagine doing that you're going to put a piece of metal in you and not absorb stuff from it, when you can put magnesium lotion on your skin, right, and absorb it from that. Oh, but a copper wire is not going to do it. So anyway, copper creates infertility. Health is fertility. Fertility is health. If you do things to ruin fertility, you are doing things directly to ruin health. It's as simple as that. So now when they're coming out with the male birth control pill, I'm like, oh, you guys, oh my goodness, don't. Just don't. We already got to help the women stop this mess. We don't need guys doing it too. And then it's just anyway. So what was Stephanie was saying? Oh, this is a great topic. Low A has definitely helped her cycles, and she's currently in premenopause. Yes, so that's awesome, Stephanie. That's what we're trying to do. And it seems that vitamin A toxicity and copper toxicity go hand in hand. They really, one does not come without the other, especially in women. So with that, there's with menstrual cycles and stuff like that, when we're trying to fix these things, I do want to give people a little stuff about how we fix it. I mean, we are just sitting there. We are trying, the whole basis of this approach is we are trying to reduce the toxins coming in. You can't eliminate them. Nothing's perfect. There is no optimal. I don't even like the word wellness. I think wellness is like, I don't even use that word. It doesn't, it's like a corporate word. It doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, wellness is health. And so why did we change the word? It's anyway. So we have, we're trying to reduce toxin intake, because the toxin you never take in doesn't have to be dealt with. It doesn't require nutrition. It doesn't require anything. So avoiding toxins is the most powerful thing you can do of all the things I'm going to talk about. Then we have getting rid of stored toxicity in the system. We're facilitating the removal of stored toxicity in the system. And for anybody out there who might believe the talking heads on the internet who say that we don't accumulate toxins, the liver doesn't store toxicity or accumulate toxicity, I can show you research from the early 1900s where they knew that it did. And why do we have tons of vitamin A in liver? Like when in animal liver, if you're eating beef liver, why is there tons of vitamin A in it? Why is there tons of copper in it? Why is there tons of toxic metals in it? Because it accumulates toxins to protect you from those toxins, because it can't get rid of them fast enough. So then the third thing that we do is we restore nutrient. We're trying to fix nutrient deficiencies, correct nutrient deficiencies, so that the body can protect itself from things, and so that it can facilitate detox because it needs those things. So that's what we do. Now, the thing about the sad thing for ladies is you don't make as much bile as men. So you detox slower in general, because the bile is the main way you get rid of toxicity. You put the bile into your intestines, you're supposed to poop out some of it. You do reabsorb some of it, which kind of sucks. But your gut absorbs anything you put in it. It's going to absorb good things and bad things. So you're going to poop out some of it and you're going to reabsorb some of it, but you do that cycle all the time. So ladies, you make less bile, so you have less opportunity to get rid of it that way. A kind of common thing we'll see in women tend to be much more constipated than men. Men tend, not always, but men tend towards diarrhea. Women tend towards constipation. It is the amount of bile that's in your intestines that triggers pooping. So if you don't have enough bile in your intestines, you tend to be constipated. And if you put way too much bile in your intestines, you tend to have diarrhea. So that's just showing the pattern in men and the pattern in bile. Okay. And then women are better at storing toxins away in body fat. And most of us know that women are just smoother than men, which is a nice thing. It's meant to be. It's a very nice thing that women are smoother than men and not as super lean and muscular. But that also means that they are much more efficient and effective at storing fat soluble toxins. So we have that. And then the other things that I tend to see in terms of how women kind of don't serve their own health is women tend to go to the doctor much more quickly than men, which can be good and bad, right? Because then they go and they get put on prescriptions that are not good for them, or they get the solution of birth control. What is the solution for women in modern medicine, right? It's like benzos for their anxiety, it's antidepressants for the depression, and birth control or hormone therapy for the other symptoms. Like that's what MDs do for women. Yeah. And they're basically saying, be quiet and get out of my office and leave me alone. I just don't want to hear it anymore. And that's not helpful. That's not serving anybody in a good way. So we're working on these root toxicities and fixing these things. Oh, Stephanie added one other thing. An anonymous guest, I'll get to your question. She said, yeah, my pain used to be crippling and I would be bedridden, and now I hardly notice most times. So
amazing.
I want people to understand that I don't have a menstrual problem protocol. I don't have a pregnancy protocol. I don't have a menopause protocol. I don't have an infertility protocol. This is very important to understand. Everybody doesn't do the same thing exactly, right? The concepts and principles, like I just went over, those big three things are what we do. So once you understand the concepts and principles, like as an example, I'll bring up Kelsey today, my girlfriend, because she's actually a practitioner doing my work with people now, and she had really bad copper toxicity.
Okay, and she had a wonderful interview here on the King Hero's Journey not long ago, so you can just go back in the archives. Yeah. Yes.
So she had very high copper. When I saw her copper, I was like, wow, this is significant. She was at 140 in her blood, which is like, I don't run into those very often. And she was having, missed cycles and heavy cycles. And as we fixed this was kind of a cool thing, mostly because I know this from other clients, but mostly because she's special to me, is she said, it happened just like I said, it would. That's always a really big compliment to me when people tell me, they're like, you told me this was going to happen. And I'm like, and they go, it did. And I go, oh, well, that's cool. Like, I always love that. She said, it was like the pendulum swing. I tell women, when we are actually fixing your menstruation stuff, as we are getting you less toxic and more nutrient replete, we'll see, like, whatever your normal cycle was. Let's say somebody was very heavy. you may see all of a sudden it swing over to the other side where it's very light, or maybe you even miss cycles. And then you're really like, what just happened? Oh my goodness. And then it'll swing back over to the other side where it'll be heavier, but less heavy than it used to be. And then we'll see it come back to where it's like less, or like maybe much, much less, like very low. And then it just comes to the middle and rests in the middle. And she said, like, she used to be very, very heavy, you know, to the point of driving her anemic. And then she missed 2 or 3 cycles, which was a little bit of a scare. And then all of a sudden it just came back and it snapped, and it's like 28 days now. And she was like, that's what you said would happen. And I'm like, cool. Cause I was, you know, even me, I'm wondering, I'm like, is this going to happen or not? When's it going to happen? And then we saw her labs, and we got her copper down, and we got her vitamin A down, and she's continuing to make progress. And, yeah, so that's a big thing. Like, getting off those, I mean, birth control, I tell women, for you ladies out there, birth control is the thing that I see ruin women's health more than anything else. When I can ask people, was there a medication that you can say, I was never the same, my health was never the same after that medication? It with women, I'd say probably, you know, 2/3 to 3/4 of them say birth control.
Wow.
So it is just, oh my gosh. I mean, if people don't, I don't know of other people fixing the problems from birth control as often as I do. So if little girls or young women or, you know, middle-aged women are getting put on this stuff, they don't know how to fix it. So they're stuck with these things. So I don't want to say these side effects, these things that happen from it are permanent. They're not. We see them fix. However, if you don't know how to fix it, then they can pretty much be permanent. And then because you don't know how to fix it, and as you get more toxic, your detox system slows down, then you're in this vicious cycle of getting more and more toxic, which makes your detox slow down, which gives you more problems, which then they put you on more meds for, and then you just keep going down this path that is no fun, and it's not going to end in a good place.
Exactly. Exactly. I like how you describe that. It's sort of like a pendulum. I'm noticing that now too, with, you know, kind of retracing is your word that you use for symptoms, and they're tending to be less extreme. They're still coming. They're, you know, it's still a little bounce back and forth, but overall, I'm sensing it is going in the right direction. I was just going to say about, you know, we hand down the toxicity, we inherit the sins of our forefathers, and that's not to judge and hate them for anything, but it is absolutely true. I also recently came up with a little cute thing in my head, and it's freedom accumulates just like toxicity, only better. So we can also accumulate. Would you say we could accumulate health and vitality?
Yes.
Nice.
Actually, the funny thing is, there's a couple people on Twitter. Now, this is a silly thing, but can we get better at detox? Well, there was about 3 or 4. Now, this is not a flex or anything. This is not me bragging, but there was people saying that when they drink alcohol, when they choose to, so they're on the program, they know that alcohol is no good for them, but people can choose to do whatever they want. You know, they're all adults. I'm trying to give people the tools so that they know how to fish, right? And then if they don't want to fish, then they can choose not to fish, but they know how, right? So they were saying that now their alcohol tolerance, right? They don't normally drink, but when they go and do it, they don't get as tipsy as fast, and they don't have hangovers.
Interesting.
Now, what does that mean in terms of what we do? It means they're processing their acetaldehyde better, and they're not building it up in their system, because that's what gives you hangovers, is acetaldehyde. And so if you can process it fast enough, you don't get hangovers. Why do people get hangovers as they get older? Why does drinking get worse for people as they get older? Because they are becoming more and more toxic, which means their detox systems slow down. So then after college, or after, you know, a couple of years in the workforce, and you're not a young buck anymore, then you feel really, really bad. And what are we doing? Well, we're avoiding the toxins on a regular basis. Things start fixing themselves. So we actually can see the fruits of the detox going faster and working better.
Amazing. That's so great. You said that bile is always the path in terms of men having an easier time because they create more bile. And can you just give us a quick rundown on how to stimulate bile production?
Oh gosh. Well, oh wow. You just opened a can right here. Okay.
As opposed to a bile dump, right? Like a bile dump.
So
Yeah.
well, yeah. So I'm gonna try to figure out how this is something I'm working on the book on toxic bile theory, because this is actually a short book, but this is the really, really important thing. Let me hit this one question before I lose it. So anonymous guest asks, so would phlebotomies for men help detox like menstruation does for women? Yes.
What's
in a way. I mean, I guess women have one cycle a month. People can donate once every 8 weeks in this country. However, I don't know how the amount, obviously every woman would be different in the amount of blood lost in a monthly cycle. And the blood donations are, 500 mils each time, half a liter. So I have seen multiple people. I've had people, myself included, who donated blood too often. And like I went 5 times in a row. So about every 8 weeks, I went 5 times in a row. And I drove myself anemic because I wasn't testing anything. I wasn't testing ferritin. I wasn't doing like a CBC, a blood count to see, the anemia panel, they call it, to see how I was doing. And all of a sudden I got what I call anemia insomnia, which is where I'd wake up at midnight every night, snap wide awake, and be just like, what in the world is going on? I was just wide awake at midnight and I couldn't figure it out. And so that's one of my, one of the insomnias that can be diagnosed from symptoms alone is what I call anemia insomnia, which is where people just wake up and they are bolt awake. And then we can look in their history. And let's say if you had a woman who has really heavy cycles and she tends to get this right after her cycle, then we could kind of be like, oh yeah, you just lost a lot of blood. This could be what we call the anemia insomnia. But anyway, what I do with the clients who work with us is we do test ferritin, and we will give both men and women the potential assignment to go donate blood a certain number of times in that 6-month window based on how much we think their ferritin needs to be lowered or how much we think their ferritin could handle. And then we always give them the disclaimer of, if you go and donate blood and you feel terrible after you donate blood, every time you donated blood, you feel terrible. Or I have people who are like, I give the blood for the couple blood tests and I feel terrible after that. And it's like, no, you're not donating blood. Mm-hmm. Even though they might have high ferritin. I had a guy who has a ferritin of 500, which is very high. He donated blood. He's like, I felt terrible for days. And I was like, okay, don't do it again. We'll get the ferritin down other ways. I have a whole live stream on ferritin. And then I have for those who are interested in toxic bile theory, which is what I'm going to get into now. Toxic bile theory, it's live streams number 71 and live streams number 53. Those are the big ones where I go over it. So now,
and here's your channel, by the way, to find that episode number 71 and 50.
71 and 53. Those are kind of the basics of toxic bile theory. Those are what we're turning into the book.
Okay.
And then I'll have to have Nathan, my other practitioner who's helping me work on getting all the toxic bile theory stuff together. I'll have to have him watch this because this is an important part of it. This how do we just make more bile, right? It's not that easy. So first, one of the misconceptions that people get about toxic bile theory is they think that I'm saying that all bile is bad. No. Toxic bile is something we don't want. So we can do things to both clean up the bile. And the main problem with toxic bile is it eats holes in things like the liver cells that make it, the little teeny ducts in the liver, the little teeny bile ducts in the liver itself. Those two things, if those happen, the bile is leaking directly from the liver into the bloodstream. So we must understand that the most toxic fluid in the body, by definition, is the waste product of the liver. That's how the liver gets rid of its toxicity, is into the bile. So the bile is how the liver, after it's processing these toxins, and maybe it's processing them, maybe it's just pushing them out into the bile. People think the liver detoxes, and it does process things. But a sewage processing plant processes things. A nuclear plant processes it, and then you get nuclear waste, and then you have to do something with it. So like the sewage processing plant has to get rid of its waste. The nuclear plant has to get rid of its waste. Those things, if they go bad, they pollute areas and they cause problems, lots of problems. So if your bile is leaking into your blood, you are self-poisoning. And so from that's called intrahepatic cholestasis, when the liver cells themselves. So the bile can be so toxic it eats away at the very cells that make it. It eats away at the pipes that carry it inside the liver, the little teeny bile ducts. Then it gets into the big bile ducts, like the common bile duct. It can eat holes in those. It can eat holes in the gallbladder. It can eat holes in your intestines, which is where it's supposed to go. And then you create leaky gut. So if any of you out there who have been treating leaky gut, I'm going to tell you the reason why maybe the approaches you did before didn't work is because none of them dealt with the bile. And the bile is what's eating holes in your gut. And then if it goes up into your stomach, your stomach is actually made to absorb. So you can absorb the bile that goes up into your stomach directly into your bloodstream through the stomach. And then what are ulcers? Ulcers are holes eaten by the bile in your stomach. I have a whole episode on bile reflux and GERD. Because in every time they find GERD, every time there's GERD, there's bile in the stomach. So it's not necessarily too much acid. Your stomach's designed to handle acid. It's that there's too much bile in it. So,
right. And bile is strongly basic, is it not?
Bile is generally basic. Yes. Once you're past the stomach, you're into an alkaline territory. Right. Yeah. So we call them bile acids, but the whole thing together is alkaline. It's like what a lot of people say about lemon juice. Like lemon juice has acid in it, but if you look at the whole picture of the lemon juice, it's actually alkaline. So it's kind of one of those things. Okay, so making more. So we talked about the basics of toxic bile theory. Leaking bile into your bloodstream is the cause of your chronic health conditions. And if we can make the bile less toxic, help you leak less bile, your health issues will improve. That's it. And how do we do that? Well, we stop putting the toxicity in, so the bile gets less toxic because we can get rid of stuff, and then we put in the nutrients that you need to repair and protect yourself against it. That's it. That's the concepts and principles here. So
and will you naturally create more bile then?
Well, okay, so yeah, so let me get into that. So we don't want to think that bile is bad. The idea here is that, I mean, your liver's going to make bile. That's it would be like saying, people might say, well, you think bile is bad. That would be like saying that I think pooping is bad. No, if you think of the bile as the liver's poop, you need the liver to poop, and you need to get rid of that poop. That's very simple. So, it's the same thing. It's just all nasty stuff moving down your, I mean, there's good stuff, right? There's food in your intestines, and the bile is part of what helps process that and absorb things from that. But also you want to get rid of it. So I have a joking term. I call it the food poop, because it's like both at the same time. It's stuff you want and stuff you don't want. So bile. The bile has a job. Like when they did studies on dogs and they tied off their bile ducts so they didn't get any bile into the small intestine. What it created in the dogs was it created what's called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, because the bile actually helps keep down certain bacteria populations. So, and it helps, to break down and absorb fats and do other things that are helpful. So we don't want to stop the bile. We just want it less toxic so it doesn't eat so many holes and things. So we don't want to necessarily force an increase in bile production. People could do that by like a very obvious way to increase your bile dumping. So think of, there's two things here. There's bile production by the liver. So the liver actually making the bile, which normally is supposed to go into the gallbladder and sit there until you have a trigger. Let's say you eat a meal and you squeeze out the bile into the common bile duct, and then it goes into your intestines. That's the normal thing. People who don't have a gallbladder, I kind of went over stuff on that in the last live stream. They just need to definitely go lower fat and spread out their meals and their supplements more through the day, because you got to match your bile flow, which is more of a trickle, because you don't have the big squeezy bag called the gallbladder to hold it and then squeeze it all out at once.
Yeah, that's an excellent stream. I recommend that.
Oh,
on the flushes, yeah. Really good.
Yeah, the liver and gallbladder flush, that was the topic last week. So so one of the things that I've kind of figured out through the research, so there is a detox enzyme called aldehyde dehydrogenase, or ALDH.
Right.
I consider this to be the most important detox enzyme in the entire body. And it's the one that lots of medications, and I go over this on my live streams, and I go over like toxins, other things slow down ALDH. A lot of the things that people might ingest turn into aldehydes or are aldehydes. Things like, people don't know that, like alcohol, ethanol turns into acetaldehyde. What makes vanilla smell? Vanilla aldehyde, or vanillin is the shorter term. What cumin aldehyde. Cinnamon aldehyde. Like a lot of these stinky things, nature is trying to really actually tell us, they're telling insects and other things, don't eat me, I'm poison. And we go and we tell ourselves that these things smell good. Things are not supposed to smell. Actually, you want to hear something crazy that my brother just told me? He saw something on Instagram, and he said that medical examiners, like pathologists and other people doing autopsies, are coming across people's livers, and they will smell like Lysol. If somebody used tons of Lysol in their day, they will smell like Febreze. Oh. They will smell like essential oils. They will smell like all these, like probably, I'm sure some people smell like they're scented candles. Like they're breathing in these toxins, and they are fat soluble, and the liver stores them in your fat. And when your liver runs out of areas to store it in, what it makes is fatty liver. Fatty liver is your liver saying, I don't have enough room to store this. We got to make more fat and store it.
Right.
So back to the bile. Okay. So like an example of something that induces a bile dump, a lot of people know this. You have a cup of coffee in the morning, and then you go poop soon afterwards. Coffee is known to induce bile dumping. That's why it also is used in coffee enemas. You can put it up the rear end and get the same dump, the opposite way. So do we want to do that? Well, so I tell people in the program, over time, people lose their interest in coffee, or they get to the point where they feel so much better that they don't need the caffeine or the coffee anymore, and they're pooping better. I helped a woman who says she has never pooped well in her entire life, and she's 71 now, and she's now having 2 or 3 bowel movements a day every day. So, especially for older ladies, right? Getting older ladies to poop it's challenging, because they've got so much toxicity in them, and it's a lifetime of it. So if you're not reducing your toxin intake and getting rid of the toxins in general, you're just building it up through your life. And this is why life sucks as so many people get older. So we don't just, what we're trying to do, this is a key thing about our whole approach. People will sometimes read my stuff, and I saw a guy on Twitter the other day saying, oh, I'm just going to add glycine and taurine, and I'm working on toxic bile theory. And I was like, no, what? Like you misunderstood everything, or you don't even know anything about it. So it's not just adding things. The more important thing is always to take things away. And what I've found is that ALDH, if it is slowed down, or if you take things that slow it down, it slows down your bile production. And a lot of people think this is good with a lot of meds or herbs or supplements. They don't realize, I can go into the research and show you that it slows down ALDH. It's in papers. They don't realize that why they feel better from that thing is because it slowed down ALDH, which then slowed down bile production, which then means if you don't make as much bile, you don't leak as much bile. And so you don't self-poison as much for a while. The problem is at some point the dam is going to break. Something's going to, the liver will, like the dam will overflow, the dam will crack, and then you're just leaking everything out. And a lot of people know this. They took a supplement. Here's an example that a lot of people can relate to. You took a supplement or a med for a while, and it helped you feel better. And you're going along, everything's fine, and then all of a sudden it's not working as well anymore. The problem's coming back. Okay, let's up our dose. So you up your dose and maybe you get some relief, but it's not as much as it was the first time. And then you're going along, and this can happen with hormone therapies too. And then you're going along, and then all of a sudden the problem's coming back, and then you try to up it again, and you get like almost no benefit at all. And now you've like doubled your medication from the start, and your symptoms are all back, or maybe even worse than they were before. And now you're stuck. And now you try other things, and then you feel even worse. Well, that's because you abused the detox system, and now it's just spewing out everywhere. Your body if you slow down bile production. So again, we're trying to remove, well, we're doing let's just say three major things for ALDH. And I'm one of the few guys who actually talks about trying to fix ALDH. We give it the minerals that it needs to run. Selenium and molybdenum are two of the most important minerals that ALDH needs to run. We give it the NAD, which is a cellular energy compound that's needed for detox pathways. We give it the NAD that the system needs by using flush niacin, also known as nicotinic acid. And then we just stop eating so many aldehydes or things that turn into aldehydes. So we relieve the stress on the ALDH system by not feeding it so many aldehydes. We give it, so the minerals I talk about are like the parts of the car. They're like the parts of the engine. And then you have to have the gasoline to drive the car. So we make sure that we have the parts of the car and that we have the gasoline, and then we can drive the car. And then we drive it nicely by not feeding it a bunch of aldehydes. And like if you were to look into, if you ladies wanted to go and look into any condition you might have, female condition, go and look up malon dialdehyde, MALON-DIALDEHYDE. Long word. Malon dialdehyde. And you'll find it's elevated in every condition that you could look at. You're not processing. Malon dialdehyde is what PUFAs turn into. So the big seed oil fad, of anti-seed oils, which I support. I support people just don't eat so much added fats. But PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids, turn into malon dialdehyde and 4-hydroxy-nonenaldehyde, or 4-HNE. And they actually use these to look for how much oxidative damage is going on in the system. They're proxies. If they find more of this, they go, there's more oxidative damage going on. And this is like fatty acid damage. So the more fats you take in, the more of these you're going to make, because every fat has PUFAs in it. You can't find a natural fat that doesn't have any PUFAs in it. So, but that's like just one example. Sugar turns into aldehydes too.
Mm-hmm.
So we have sugars turning into aldehydes. We have fats turning into aldehydes. And all of that strains your ALDH system. And then if you're one to, have a bunch of scented stuff, aldehydes smell generally. They do. That's just the way they are. So
yeah, I'll just quickly jump in that I have such a huge aversion, I'll even call it an allergy just to impress people with the importance of it, against any fragrances. And it's, now even the natural stuff and the oils, I know people are thinking they're so much better, but yeah, I just don't want any of it at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking to Kelsey. I was like, I want you to make candles or something. Like, make like good candles that just don't smell at all.
I know. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, but the smells are really like, folks, nature is trying to warn you away from smells. Like when you think of like one of the foods we eat a lot, well, some of the basic foods that we eat a lot in the program, muscle meats, that could be red meat or poultry, beans, various beans, and grains. Now, when you think of cooking those foods, I mean, if you grill a steak, it's going to smell. But if you have a steak sitting on the counter and it's fresh, does it smell?
It should not. No,
you shouldn't smell.
You don't want to eat it. Yeah.
You got to get it right up in your face to smell it, right? And do grains generally like make your whole house smell, or do beans make your whole house smell? No, they don't. So the foods that we're generally using do not smell a lot. And there's a reason for that. So that's just another example of like how we are going against the grain, but then we are also getting a lot of results that others aren't. So.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. So you don't want to necessarily push your body as a woman to create a whole bunch more bile.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Let me just add that. Yeah.
Okay,
So if you're leaking bile and you then try to go and start forcing more bile production and more bile dumping,
right.
you're
More
going to
leaking.
leak more and you're going to feel terrible. So we want to let it happen. We actually have times. So to expand on this, as we get people better, like their symptoms are going away, they're getting better, but then all of a sudden at some point, we have a term. I haven't expanded on this anywhere. I just kind of just talk about it places, but I don't expand on it because it's still kind of a theory. We call it the liver cracking open. And it's like the liver has gotten so much healthier. The ALDH is running so much faster. You start making, your liver is like, oh my goodness, I can start making more bile and getting rid of it because I want to get rid of this toxicity. And you're going to suffer a little bit, but we're going to get rid of this toxicity. And I call it the liver cracking open. And they just start making more bile and dumping more toxicity. And it sucks for a while. And then it goes away. And then people are like, oh my gosh, all these problems are gone now. The things that were still hanging on, they are now gone. And so that's the best explanation I can have for it. Is it seems that there's some, it's like when people are going through mental and emotional and spiritual work, right? And they hit something that's rough, and it's going to be a little rough time going through it, right? But they're going to come out on the other side better. And so these same things happen physically, biochemically from this stuff too. And then they often have mental or emotional, spiritual breakthroughs at the same time because now they don't have that toxicity blocking them. Actually, Kelsey's going through some of that right now, and it's kind of cool to watch. She was getting better. She hit a rough patch recently, and I was kind of like, okay, I'm telling myself my own stuff. I'm trying to convince myself of my own stuff as I'm watching someone I care about go through it, and I'm like, it's rough right now. I know we're working on things, but I know she's going to get better. I know she's going to come out the other side better. And I would remind her of that. And then all of a sudden she started coming through the other side. And all of a sudden she wants to do all of this emotional, mental, spiritual work. And I'm taking a little bit of the brunt of it, but it was fun. It was good because I actually told her, I said, you wanting to do this now is a sign that you are better. Like you have improved. You couldn't handle this before. You would not have done this before because your system was not strong enough. And now all of a sudden you're wanting to do it. So
Fascinating. That's amazing.
It was really cool.
Yeah, so good. I've noticed the two because I'm heavy on both subjects right now.
Mhm.
And I've noticed the two are incredibly mutually supportive. That working on the body is helping the mental, emotional, spiritual release, and working on the mental, emotional, spiritual release, of course, helps the body. And I have seen literal what I felt to be many miracles happen, where clearly my body had dumped bile and it was
Mhm.
causing sickness, and then I could release it and find the programs and yeah. So it's really amazing.
Yeah,
Hello.
well, a simple thing is like hypoglycemia. People know about like when people's blood sugar drops and they get horribly angry and they say terrible things, and it's like sometimes I think issues for them come up that aren't necessarily their real issues. It's just they're so jumbled. And then they fix their hypoglycemia and then they're like, "Oh, this is all gone now." And I'm like, "So how many people out there are just a lot of what let's say they go and they're trying to work on themselves and they're kind of getting there, but it's like the biochemical keeps pulling them back and they can't overpower necessarily the physiology if it depending upon how it's all set up. Like some people you fix your mental stuff and it seems to help the physical, and some people they fix the physical stuff and then all of a sudden they go, maybe I didn't really have this mental stuff, or maybe it wasn't me, like, and it just goes away. So it's really cool. They do play together, and I know which area I'm the expert. I'm an expert in, and that's not the work area. I'm more of like, let's fix the car engine.
Yeah, which is actually a perfect marriage between the masculine and feminine side. Before we go on, Paul has a question. are menopausal. Yeah, we're going to get into menopause. Maybe I'll save this
Thank
just to keep ourselves a little bit in some kind of sequence here. There's so much, and I can't recommend your course enough. By the way, the Love Your Liver. If people have a chance to go, and it's extremely affordable for an entire year, you get access to this forum. The information is great, and then the people are great too, because if you're brave enough to ask questions about pooping and stuff like that, they will chime in and help you to no end, because they've received benefits and they want that for others. It's a really beautiful thing. So yeah, definitely recommend that. So yeah, one last thing I want to say about menstruation is, having now given birth to a baby and been through menstrual cramps and all that kind of thing, I'm shocked how similar sensation those are. It seems like it really does activate digestion or block digestion is a way, right? Like the cramps are the same. A contraction is just an exaggerated cramp. So then is that your, like, how do you say it? Like when the colon's trying to move things and it's doing this, what is that again?
The peristalsis. Are you talking
Peristalsis,
about?
not cholestasis. Yeah, peristalsis, exactly. Does all of that activate the peristalsis? Is that what the is
I mean, the thing I know about pregnancy is the craziest numbers that I can see on like vitamin A and especially copper are in pregnant women.
Okay.
And it is considered, so in terms of the muscle contractions and in terms of the mechanics down there, I'm not your guy. I'm, you know, the crazy thing is actually bile in the blood has been shown to tend to paralyze things, to make things work, like muscles work less. I mean, you go from like when they injected bile into dogs, they found like paralysis and then coma and then death. So paralysis, like what we can see in a lot of people is, let's say like gastroparesis. I get people where their stomach is basically paralyzed. Well, I was just talking about bile acid reflux and all that stuff. So they have bile in their stomach. It's enough, and it's the recipe of it. That's the important thing, is the recipe of the bile can create different symptoms. So, and this has been shown in the research. Like they'll show this condition has a bile composition, they call it bile composition, but a bile acid recipe like this, and this other related, like there was a great paper on thyroid stuff and how they could show that the bile acid patterns were the same in like the hyperthyroid versus the hypothyroid versus the hypothyroid who were, this was the craziest one. The hypothyroid who were medicated on thyroid hormone had the same bile pattern as the people who were not hypothyroid. So the thyroid hormone changed their bile recipe as their thyroid hormone looked better, and then their symptoms were less. So a lot of the things we're doing are changing our bile acid recipe. But in terms of, so I have a paper that says, so let's go over this. So intrahepatic cholestasis in pregnancy is why a lot of women have problems. Intrahepatic cholestasis means that the bile is from, intra means within, hepatic is the liver, cholestasis is basically bile leaking into the blood. So that means you are leaking bile into the blood directly from inside the liver. Like it's not even escaping the liver. And this is the cause of what a lot of women hear about with pregnancy, which is the pruritus, the itching of pregnancy. And that's like a ton of bile coming out into the blood. And one of the ways that if you leak bile directly into the blood, so normally this is a little more complex, but when you eat, you trigger a bile dump. If you have intrahepatic cholestasis, you dump that bile, but it goes right into your blood. Okay, it's not passing go, it's not collecting $200, it's right into your blood. So you eat, the body wants to dump the bile to help the food to digest, but it just goes right into your blood. So then here's an idea. If your body is intelligent, right? We believe this. If your body is intelligent and it says, I've already got too much bile in my blood, eating would make this worse. I'm going to tell you not to eat. I'm going to give you every sign not to eat. I'm going to tell you not to brush your teeth, or it's going to make you want to throw up the bile that's coming up into your stomach. I remember in naturopathic medical school, the funny thing was the older female naturopathic doctor who was into, OB stuff. That was her thing. She said that like there are a couple of things with pregnancy that fix most things. She was like, okay, men, she's like, have something ready for your wife to eat before her feet hit the ground. Like it's on the nightstand, like a sandwich or whatever. Just have her eat as soon as she gets up. Now, if it's like a sandwich, bread actually soaks up a lot of stuff. So bread could go down, soak up a lot of stuff, stabilize the blood sugar, and then have her starting her day off a lot better. But the other thing she said was 100 grams of protein a day will prevent, what's the term I'm thinking? The high blood pressure, preeclampsia. She's like, I get these young girls who eat absolute garbage. I get them on 100 grams of protein a day, and the preeclampsia they had goes away, or they totally avoid it. And I'm like, okay, well, protein. What is protein not that we just talked about in this? Protein is not sugar, and protein is not fat. So if they're a lot of these, let's say, young girls who are smaller, if they're eating 100 grams of protein a day, there's not a lot of other stuff that they can fit in around that. So because they're just full, like 100 grams of protein is a lot of food by itself. So she was just fixing these things. And now I look back on those and I go, oh, this all makes sense. But we now have research. It was stated in a paper that subclinical cholestasis, subclinical intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy. Okay, so subclinical means the doctors, by the symptoms, they know it's there. They're saying you have all the symptoms of this, but your labs don't show it. Or your lab number isn't high enough for us to say you have it. They said that subclinical cholestasis can now, these days, can now be considered normal in pregnancy. So they're saying it is normal for women to be leaking a bunch of bile into their bloodstream. And this is why women feel so terrible when they're going through pregnancy, when they're delivering. We see women who, do the program. They had kids before they did the program, and then they do the program, and then after that they have, kids, and they say this was so much easier. The kid is healthier. I mean, what they say, 80% of kids are born jaundiced these days. 80% are born jaundiced. Jaundiced is too much bilirubin in the blood, and it's getting stored in the skin. Bilirubin, another way you could say it, is bile-irubin. So these kids have too much bile. It's overpowering the placenta. It's getting, their livers are probably messed up because they're inheriting all this toxicity, or the mothers are taking absolute trash prenatals, which are toxic as all get out. And they're getting more and more poison. They're doing that stuff. Oh my gosh. The Weston A. Price oriented, like super high vitamin A pregnancy diets where they're like, eat tons of eggs and do raw dairy and eat liver. And I'm like, oh, you're just ruining people. And then they wonder, these high vitamin A people, they wonder why their children are so allergic. I could show you research showing that directly correlates allergies in kids to how much vitamin A they got when they were either after they were born, or probably, I don't know if it exists, but I guess in utero too. So while the pregnancy was going on, that they could have been soaked up in vitamin A. And then the other thing about jaundiced kids being yellow, what color is vitamin A? Vitamin A is generally yellow. So fatty liver's yellow. Bile is yellow. We can store bile in fat. So we've got all these yellow toxin things getting stored, and it's turning our fat yellow. If you ever watch liposuctions, the fat that's sucked out of them, it's like yellowish orange a lot of times. I remember hearing a liposuction doctor say he could tell when a patient was eating healthy because they had orange fat.
Oh, darn.
Your body fat is not supposed to be orange. Like if you looked at a steak and you saw that the fat on the steak was orange, you would not want to buy that steak. Your instinct would say that is not right. That is sick. But when we have the plastic surgeon said, oh, well, I know they're eating their fruits and vegetables, lots of mangoes and whatever, carrots and sweet potatoes. And yeah, it's all just getting stored in their fat.
Right.
So, and then they're making, obviously, if people are going in for liposuction, they feel like they have too much fat. And I say that vitamin A is part of the obesity problem. And then we're seeing orange fat. So it all just kind of goes together.
Yeah, adds up like crazy. And so since we're into pregnancy and let's see if there's anything Would like the morning sickness, it's classically titled morning sickness. Is there a reason that the morning would be a worse time for a pregnant woman's health?
Well, I remember getting the idea in naturopathic medical school that same older lady naturopath, she was saying they call it morning sickness, but it can be any time of day.
Right.
Right. But the morning is a lot of people when they wake up too early in the morning and they can't go back to sleep, or this morning sickness. There is if somebody wanted to go and look up circadian rhythm of bile, we have a circadian rhythm. We have a daily cycle of when the body just dumps bile. And one of those cycles is, around 2 to 4 in the morning. And so if somebody does that bile dump and it works their way back up into, let's say, a pregnant woman's stomach, which with the pregnancy, right, there's enough stuff going on down there. There's mechanical blockages and things pressing on things. So if you get it up in there, and let's say that whatever the stomach contents are, whether there's bile or whatever else, it's not moving downwards very well, the body's going to say, don't put more in here. Like nausea is bile in the stomach. Most of the time, that's what it is.
Clear as day to me now.
Yeah. We get people who get nausea, and then I'm like, take some charcoal, and they do, and it's like, oh, it's gone. And I'm like, yeah. They say, what did you do? And I'm like, all you do is you soaked up the bile. And they'll say, but I tried it with pills and it didn't work. And I tried a powder and it did. And I say, that's because you needed the powder. Capsules don't open necessarily in your stomach. They might not open until your intestine. You have the bile in your stomach. So you got to do a powder so that it coats the whole way down and it soaks up the bile in your stomach, and then it'll work. What we don't understand in the US is that in Europe, it's absolutely normal for like the first line thing for stomach, like, sick stomach or just upset tummy or whatever it is, nausea, they give charcoal first. It's normal over there. But here we're like, oh, no, we got to have Pepto-Bismol and we got to have, all these other things it's just throw some charcoal down there. But it's got to be if you're trying to deal with the stomach or the esophagus, like heartburn and that stuff, it's got to be a powder in water. So the morning sickness is just bile in the stomach. But again, intrahepatic cholestasis, the word itself. Cola is bile related. Stasis is, stagnation. So most people, I remember when I used to think about that, I was like, bile stagnation, but why is it going everywhere? Like, it's not stagnant, it's moving, it's going everywhere. Well, really what they mean is that the bile is going places it's not supposed to be. So another example of like the stagnation ideas, I would say, like, okay, so if you have a creek and somebody comes along and they block the creek is going to continue flowing. It's just going to go a different way. Mm-hmm. It may fill up higher if it can, but at some point it's going to overflow and go around and go into places where I don't want to say it wasn't supposed to. I mean, it's nature. The water can go wherever it wants, but in our body, we don't want that overflow going into our blood. We don't want it going into our stomach. We don't want it going anywhere that it's not supposed to be. And then we avoid the problems if we don't have that happening.
Yeah, nature has such thing as right place. And this is a good metaphor that if you come across a rose bush and it's got a thorn on it, you have no problem with that. Mm-hmm. But if you step on the thorn and it's in your foot, you have a big problem with that thorn. You take issue with it because it's not in its right place anymore. It's true nature, so to speak. So yeah, that's a good one. I wanted to talk about the placenta, which I find fascinating because in the natural health world, of course, I know you recommend not eating it, that it is a third liver. And mm-hmm. Do you know that the spiritual meaning of the placenta I looked up yesterday is a little bit of around, a sacred connection, of course, between mom and baby, but it's about protection. It's the spiritual jacket. And right? It's right there.
Right.
Yeah. It is to protect that baby at all cost.
Yeah. And I mean, about the placenta, I mean, okay. This is like one of those things where I realized later, like, I mean, I was the good husband. I got the ex-wife's placenta from both of my children. I took it home and I dried it in the oven and sliced it and put it in the blender and made her capsules out of it. And I did all of that. I don't know that it necessarily did anything good for her. I don't think it did. But really what we talked about. So if the liver is full of toxins, which it is, and if the placenta is a third liver, and taking in toxins slows detox, slowing detox would slow bile production. So therefore, there could be some relief for, let's say, postpartum depression, because these women are taking something that directly slows down their bile production. And so then they leak less and then they feel better.
Right.
So it makes sense. Now, I do want to say one other thing where people will say, well, certain animals eat the placenta right after birth. Those are usually prey animals. They're not predators. They're typically prey. And the reason that there's a theory of why they do that. So the mother just had a baby, and now there's this placenta on the ground. Well, if she left it behind, that's a giant flashing signal to predators around that there's a new baby right around here, and they're not going to put up much of a fight. So they eat it as a survival thing. It's like when people tell me, why do predators eat the liver first? It's not because there's some deep nutritional wisdom. It's survival. The easiest, largest, softest chunk of meat for a predator to get to, they don't have like fancy butcher knives and stuff like that. They're tearing at things, is right under the rib cage, right? So you can go right into there. You get the biggest hunk of meat. As soon as that animal, that prey animal, is dead and bleeding and starting to smell up the place, because animals smell a lot better than we do. There's scavengers coming. There's other predators coming. They're just like, there's a free meal. So let's all converge on it. There's the vultures circling, right? Everything wants a piece. Well, so the predator doesn't want to sit there and have to mess around with all these little guys. So he just gets his thing and gets out. And then he doesn't have to worry about all that. So that's why they do it first. And predator livers are actually known to be the most toxic livers around. And predators are not known for living a long time in general. So it's all connected. I mean, but it's just nature and survival. And, it doesn't, just because something does something in nature does not mean it is like super ancient. It's super ancient wisdom of how to stay alive is what it is. Right. It's not super ancient wisdom of like how to live the longest or be the healthiest. It's so they can reproduce and be done with their cycle here.
Exactly. And we talked about this on, I think, the last or the first of your interviews, how people, the way that they eat in survival mode can be very different, right? Like, yes, kidney beans aren't the best bean for you, but if you were starving, you'd be eating those beans. Because that's a higher priority and your body would recognize that. So, yeah.
Starvation will ruin your health faster than anything. So, yeah.
Right.
You got to find food to eat.
It's always triage for the body. So, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really good. Really good to know. And that placenta. So don't eat it. Also, I've seen a lot of pictures comparing placentas of various women. And if the placenta is like big and juicy and dark red, is that better than a pale looking placenta, or would you think it might be the other way around?
So it's kind of hard to put a value on it. And I'll say that for a specific reason. So in longevity research in humans, what has been found is that, so the majority of people that we're concerned about in longevity, right, are the obese ones, the overweight ones, right? Because that's what we see around us so often. However, in the longevity research, people who are chronically underweight, the chronically underweight people actually die earlier than the obese people a lot of times. They actually, longevity-wise, they're not doing as well as obese people. So they call it the obesity paradox. And what we're talking about here is, so could like a small placenta pale be better than a big heavy one? Well, a big heavy one. So the idea here is that, okay, this is theory stuff, but the chronically underweight people, I think, are they're typically intrahepatic cholestasis. Their bile is going straight back into their system. And so part of the reason why they're underweight is because they don't have the bile in their intestines helping them to absorb food. So they're simply sort of kind of slowly, they're slowly not getting enough food. Like, I don't want to say starving, but they're just not getting enough food. So they can't put on weight. And then they tend to be very sensitive to anything and everything, foods, supplements, medications. They don't know what to do. There's EMF sensitivity, multiple chemical sensitivity. Like when you tend to run into people who have like a lot of EMF sensitivity or a lot of multiple chemical sensitivity, they're often underweight. And that's the pattern. And the other thing about underweight people is they are not good at making toxin storage. Right? They're not good at making body fat for whatever reason. However it happens, they're not good at making an area of fat to pull the toxins out of their blood so that those toxins are not affecting their brain and their heart and everything else. So that could be like the example of like the small placenta, pale, whatever, shriveled. I don't know. I haven't seen that many placentas in my time, to be honest. But then the really big one, right? That could be like the equivalent of more like the overweight or obese, where they're good at making storage. It's getting bigger. It's holding more stuff. Is that necessarily better? I don't want to say. I don't look at. I mean, I love the idea. The idea of cutting the not cutting the cord until you need to, or even the people who want to like leave it on and all that stuff. I'm all for that. Mm-hmm. Just don't eat it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I feel lucky. I kept mine, but I didn't eat it. I ended up tossing it when I moved. So my son's like, good. He was happy about that.
Yeah, I had mine in the freezer for a while, the second one, until I made it. So
right. There you go. So let's see where to go from here around.
The menopausal question.
Sure. Yeah, we could jump over to menopause and maybe circle back to a few other things if you like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so that question, what was it? Are menopausal symptoms a predominantly modern Western cultural phenomenon due to diet or other factors? Sorry if this has already been addressed. I showed up a bit late. No, we tried to leave menopause for the last part. Do I think it is happening more in the Western world than it has before? Yes. I mean, have these things always happened? Yes. The funny thing is like when you look through history, the wealthy of history, the rich of history have always figured out how to poison themselves because they're doing these things for status. And they're like, look at how much of this I have. And then they get diseases that the poor people didn't. And the funny thing is with our diet, people joke about, they call it the prison diet or other things. And some people call, they're like, you eat peasant food. And it's so funny. I'm like, seriously, we're still doing that today? Like we're still talking down to people because of the foods they're choosing to eat when they're gaining their health back. So when we're looking at, a lot of people are eating a lot of grains, a lot of beans, and, some muscle meat. Some people are eating a lot of muscle meat. But they look at that diet and they're like, this is slop. They're like, this is prison food. And I'm just like, it's funny that, in history where they would say that the poor people did not get the diseases of the rich. And then you look at rice and beans and a little bit of meat, and it's like, that's a really good human diet. That's what Grant Genereux did. He started this whole thing. He's eaten a small variation on beef or bison, black beans, and white or brown rice for going on 10 years now. His vitamin A level in his blood, his serum retinol, is below lab detection limits. And he has proven both with himself, and I think he did, I think it was a guinea pig or a hamster, and another gentleman did another like, rodent or whatever it was. And they put those on adequate in every other way, but basically low or all close to zero vitamin A diets, and those animals just thrive. They didn't have to, there was some tail condition that Grant heard about that they get in captivity, and he said his never got it. So, and now actually Mike Roberto posted on Twitter that monkeys are now in the zoos are now needing sunscreen. Monkeys are getting sunburned Well, we talk about here that like PUFAs and vitamin A together are the root cause of sunscreen or sun damage to the skin and sunburns. And what are they feeding all these animals? Vitamin A. I have a paper talking about cheetahs in the zoos getting vitamin A toxicity from them feeding them too much liver. Like it's everywhere. It's all around us. So do I think that menopause is getting worse in the West because of this toxicity epidemic? And see, so yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. The thing is that all of these factors, so just remember, first of all, you come with your inherited toxicity. So let's say great grandma had no menopausal symptoms, and then grandma had a little bit, and then your mom had a lot, and then you have, it's ungodly. Well, that can just, first, there's nature and nurture, right? We get the genetics from them, but we also, the nature is also we inherit the toxicities and deficiencies. You are made of what your mother was eating and what she was already made of, and you are not made of the stuff that she didn't have to give you, right? We are not born a clean slate by any means. And I'm so glad that you used that term, that like the sins of the father, because I haven't used it yet because I didn't want to bring on all the types of comments where people, you're misinterpreting that. And I'm like, no, is it a metaphor? I'm trying to think. I don't remember which term it would be right for that one. Anyway, but so they inherit all of it. And then we've got, so not only like, let's say the jab schedule has increased, but there's more pharmaceuticals. There's pharmaceuticals in the tap water. There's vitamin A being handed down. There's copper being handed down. There's copper water pipes. There's the stuff in the sky. There's all these things that are accumulating in people. And we're seeing symptoms getting worse and worse and worse. So when people say, is it just vitamin A? Like, but they used to eat lots of vitamin A. No, people didn't used to eat as many eggs as they do now. People didn't used to slurp down as much dairy as they are now. Like, chickens never laid this many eggs as they do now. And you have to give chickens tons of vitamin A to make them push out this many eggs. So a chicken living in the wild probably, from what I understand, they put out very few eggs compared to these domesticated chickens. And
intermittently, not all year long.
Right. So these things that people think, they're like, well, people used to eat tons of vitamin A. And I'm like, no. They ate milk and honey in the Bible. And I'm like, yeah, they did not have like bee farms getting honey. They didn't have, the cows would only produce milk for after a calf, and then it would stop, and the family might have had one cow. And then I tell them, if you want to make butter or cream from the milk, what kind of milk does that leave you with? Skim milk. So all of a sudden you're not drinking full fat milk and cream and butter and all this. And then what would they do with the skim milk? They would give it to the pigs to fatten them up. It was known to fatten pigs very well. Do we have a problem with fat these days? Yeah. Fat people, maybe, yeah. So maybe we don't want to eat tons of the most potent growth food that we could, because if you're done growing up, you only can grow out. So, but yeah, it's a big problem. And menopause is another time when it seems that the toxins get stirred up. One of the examples I use about menopause, well, first of all, in terms of what has my work done for women, I have had women start the program, start working with me. They're going along. They're already in menopause, and their cycle comes back. So we made that their body said, we're done. We're infertile now, but based on whatever you've done, we're done. We're cooked, if you want to call it that way. But we get them healthy enough, and all of a sudden, it comes back. It's like we had a woman who was unexplained infertility for 5 years. She does the Love Your Liver stuff and that works with me for a year. Boom, pregnant.
Wow, amazing.
We have a 40-year-old woman who's trying to do, to practice safe sex with her husband because she doesn't want any more kids. And she's 40. And I told her, I said, you need to be like super careful, or else this program is going to make you so fertile that if you mess up, you're probably going to be pregnant. Later she comes and she says, we messed up one time and now I'm pregnant.
Wow. Wow.
So
Amazing. So
this
good.
stuff is really like, it's the same. Fertility is health. Health is fertility. If we are, if we are fixing health, we should see improvements in fertility. So,
Right. Right. Quick story, when I did all that chemotherapy first for 11 months in a row every 2 weeks, and then 5 weeks in a row every single day after an 18-month remission. And after that, I started all of a sudden like, I think I want to have a baby. Like literally never in my life have I had that thought. And so then the doctors reveal that all of those drugs they gave me meant I likely was not to conceive. First of all, oh, thank you for the order of operations and not telling me in advance to give any choice whatsoever. But I thought this would be interesting for you because, like that, the instant cause of infertility that obviously many people experience enough that they told me that. I was very lucky in that I, again, probably the energetics of everything, and I went because the chemo put me in menopause. At 29, I started to have menopausal symptoms and hot flashes, and my period stopped. And then next thing you know, I healed, my period came back, I got pregnant. And then also, lots of fallout after that since, back in maybe a normally timed menopause now. But so yeah, like the drugs that they're giving are obviously killing. Now there's one little complication. Heroin addicts get pregnant too. And they're not super healthy or vital. So
right. Oh, well, I mean, nature, as the little saying from Jurassic Park goes, like, nature will find a way. Like, nature will do its best. And can people be doing terrible things and still, terribly unhealthy things, I'll put it that way, and still get pregnant? Yes. I mean, it depends on where they're starting from. I mean, I think the funny example I wanted to say about your stuff was, like, they gave you chemo, which is toxicity, right? They gave you toxins and you went into menopause, right? So we're saying here, if we detox people and we give them what they need, they can come out of it. You may have just gotten rid of enough of the toxicity over time that then your cycle came back. And this can happen, it depends on all the things you were doing. Like, it's the whole context of it. And then you get pregnant again. So it's just the idea here is not always that, like, if you're not healthy, you can't get pregnant. No, because we have tons of people who are very, very sick if you look at the general quality of the children coming into the US these days from pregnant women, there's tons of disease. The kids are not so bright as they used to be. Like, there's problems showing up. Like, they are not made of the right things. There's too much toxicity. And people may be like, well, that's not fair. And it's like, no, it doesn't have to be fair. Life is not fair. If your kid was marinating in poison, you could be pregnant and still carry it, and you come out with an even unhealthier kid than you were.
Right.
I knew my son, between my two kids, I think they're 2.5 years. No, they're 3.5 years apart. My daughter, I've seen this with too many people to not notice the pattern. The first child is generally the healthiest. And then every child after that, generally, if the mother is not doing anything to fix the environment, each child after that is more and more sick.
Right.
They're smaller, like the runt of the litter kind of thing. They get smaller, they get weaker, they have more issues. Like, it's just accumulated toxicity. Was my son, second born, sicker than my daughter? Yes. I knew if I gave that kid, if that kid ever got any shots, he was going like full blown autistic. And now he's doing great. We've actually got, he had anaphylaxis to tree nuts. And now, based on testing, we have him down from 3 tree nuts that he was anaphylactic to down to 1.
Nice.
So I'm really excited about this. I'm working on my new products that I can have him take, because he doesn't take pills. So I'm working on the liquids, and he's going to do those. And I'm hoping that can just wipe it out. And then, that'll be really cool. I keep telling him, like, do you want to keep carrying around your EpiPen? Because you could take these things and not have to, we could fix it. So anyway, but yeah, that's a big thing with the pregnancy, the handing down toxicity. The mother hands down the toxicity, The toxicity tends to get worse as the kids, as time goes on. And so each kid tends to have more issues than the one, or more or different issues than the one before it. And it's just kind of the way it is.
Right. Again, the animal part of us is also mandated to survive and reproduce. So that is very high priority. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So could we talk about the whole scam of the hormone industry, that there must be $1 bazillion invested in that every year, and they're pushing it like crazy too, right? That becomes massive campaigns. I had somebody on, I can't remember their name offhand, but especially, I believe it was in the UK, when there's campaigning to get women on the hormones. What happens when you take synthetic hormones of any kind? What's the difference between those and the ones your body would create?
Well, first of all, it's like the whole Premarin thing. You remember that?
Exactly.
So Premarin was pregnant mare urine.
Right. That's why it reminds me of horses and urine. Yeah.
Horse hormones. So horses have 7 estrogens. None of them match ours. And humans only have 3. So none of these are matching. And then they gave them to women. And then they were so surprised when there was all this rise in cancers and other things associated with it. And it's like, yeah, you don't just get to do that. When I heard about how they collected it, like they'd have the horses standing over grates, and the horses would just pee, and then they just collect it down under the grates. And I was like, this sounds just so horrible. So synthetic hormones are not going to do exactly the same things as ours. So they're going to generally be more toxic. Why does the pharmaceutical industry need to make new hormones? Because they can't patent something that is found in the human body.
Right.
If something is naturally occurring, they cannot patent it. They are not interested. They leave that to the compounding pharmacies to make their bioidentical hormones. But remember, the pharmaceutical industry still makes the bioidentical hormones. They just make them special for them. So synthetic hormones are always going to be a problem. Natural hormones, well, let me explain why hormone therapy in general. And so what I'm about to go into is not addressed to anybody who, like, if you're missing the parts of you that make hormones, whether you're missing your thyroid, whether you're missing your ovaries, and just so you ladies know, the uterus still makes hormones. Like, almost your entire reproductive system makes some amount of hormones, and your adrenals make hormones. So after menopause, your adrenals can still make sex hormones. That you're not like gone. I always wondered about when, before I thought about all this stuff, I was like, wait, when they spay or neuter dogs, why don't they just fall apart? Like, why don't they, like, they're not making hormones anymore? And then I finally figured out, the adrenals are still going. The adrenals can still make up for it. So not fully, but here's the idea about hormones. So I'm not talking to anybody who's missing parts and they need hormones to survive. This is just like people who slowly get less well, and then all of a sudden they don't feel good, and they're like, well, I'm going to get on hormones. Their doctor's like, put them on hormones. Now the big thing these days is to get on semaglutide to lose weight, and then hormones for all the rest of it. My buddy was in a breakfast group, and he said all the older, all these guys in there, these are all like high-powered business guys in there. He's like, all of them, it seems like, are on semaglutide and TRT. He's like, and they won't work out. They don't have the time for that. They don't have the energy for that. They just want to be skinny and well, they want to be big and lean. And so they're just going to do it with drugs. Now they're coming out with terms like Ozempic face and Ozempic butt, because people are losing so much muscle in their face and in their butt that it's causing them to look different. Like, there's a specific look that they're seeing, which is really just a starvation look, because that's what it does. Anyway, but back to hormones. Okay, so the idea here is somebody doesn't feel good. They go and they get their hormones tested. Their hormones are not good. And their doctor says these things go together. You don't feel good. You can't, guys, you don't have libido. You're not functioning well in the bedroom because, you're not building muscle because your testosterone sucks, and they have all their other things for women. Okay, well, first of all, something got those people to that spot, right? Toxicities, deficiencies, all that stuff. This also means that their liver is having trouble keeping up with its jobs. It's not doing well. That's why the toxicity is accumulating. Now, remember how I said earlier that your liver has to process all the hormones in your system? And hormones are some of the most complex things that the liver deals with. So now you have somebody whose liver's not working as well as it could. They're toxic, they're deficient, and they're going to go and I'm talking about bioidentical hormones here. I'm talking about synthetic hormones. I'm talking about just taking hormones in general. They're going to go and give them hormones so that they feel better right away. And that can be drastic. People can feel better drastically quickly from hormones. And so they're going to give them hormones to help them feel better and to band-aid the problem. To get them to, again, shut up and go home and leave me alone so I can work on the next patient for 10 minutes. So they do this. Now, I'm going to I usually use this example, zinc deficiency. Okay. For men and women to have healthy hormones, you need to have enough zinc. And know the normal range of zinc on a blood test is not useful at all. But you need a sufficient amount of zinc to run things. So let's say a guy or a woman, I'm just going to do the guy example because guys' hormones are so much easier than women's. A guy has low testosterone. Okay. He's got a zinc deficiency too. So they go and they give him TRT. They give him testosterone replacement. Okay. He feels great. He's like, my muscles are bigger and I'm leaner and I'm, the wife and I are having fun and all this stuff. Okay. The zinc deficiency, let's assume that that's being completely ignored. Okay, you need zinc for I think the last count I saw was 400 or 200 or 300 different processes in your body to run correctly. So if you're missing zinc, all of those processes are not running as well as they should. So then you go along on your testosterone and you're feeling good and everything's good. And you go to your checkup in a year or two and all of a sudden you're like, doc, it's not working as well. I don't have what I used to. Can you make it? Can you make it like when I first started? Right? Chasing the dragon, if you know what that term is. Can we be like it was the first time? And the doctor will check his labs. Okay, well, yeah, I can give you a bit more. We could pump you a little higher in the range, make you feel a little better. He gives them some more. And again, it improves, but not as much as it did before. Because you need zinc to run the whole process. So you're just forcing the system to run hotter than it should. And it's not as efficient. So then, again, he's going to go back later and be like, doc, it's not working as well. And so then he does it again. And they eventually get to the point where the doctor says, I can't give you any more. If I give you any more, it looks like I'm giving you steroids because your testosterone is going to be out of range. And then that's not okay with his medical board. So there's only so high they'll go. And then the guy's like, but I don't feel like I used to. Well, that's because all of the problems that got him there to where he needed or wanted the hormones have all been completely ignored and shoved under the carpet so he could get his quick fix of feeling good on TRT. So the same thing happens with women. Women just have more hormones that they're messing with. They're messing with estrogens and progesterones and testosterone, and they're doing a mixture in there. Typically, sometimes they're just giving them one. But yeah, and then they're adding, okay, so we have a liver that was not doing well. And then we're giving it even more hormones to deal with, to now process and detox. And a lot of these, anti-aging places or the hormone places, they'll give a ton of crappy supplements to try to boost things. Anytime you hear about boosting, you should probably just turn around and walk away. You don't want to boost your body. This is a basic concept. We don't boost, we restore. So if you're looking at studies where they're like, it raised this, and then you go, is that an essential nutrient? If it's not, if it's some herb, herbs are not essential. You don't have to have any herbs to live. So if an herb is not essential, but it's making the body do something, you want to think of it as making the body do something it either didn't want to do because of its deep wisdom of saying, I can't do this right now, or it will cause more problems, or something that it couldn't do.
Right.
So if your body, let's say this is a theory that I've worked on for a while. Let's say your body, your liver, is having trouble processing everything. And it says, I need to lower the load that I'm under because I can't deal with all of this. So what if your body in its infinite wisdom said, we could make less hormones?
Ah,
I could process less hormones. That would take the load off. And the body goes, okay. And then we start going, well, I don't feel good. And then let's throw some more hormones in there. You see, so the body will try to do things. We always have to assume that the body is doing the best. This is like a therapy or counseling thing. The body is doing the best it can with the tools it has at any one moment. We always have to assume that the body is doing the best it can for us. This is even like cancer. What is cancer? Cancer is toxin storage tissue that actually has quite a lot of detox capacity. But the reason when cancer is showing up, it means there's a lot of toxicity, and the liver's been overwhelmed and the kidneys have been overwhelmed. And now the body's saying, we have to store this out of the blood somewhere. So let's make these extra compartments. It's very much analogous to today in the West, where people are buying storage units or renting storage units.
Yeah.
Like their house can't have enough stuff in it. Their house has too much stuff. So let's go get a storage unit and put stuff there. And then that one fills up. And they're like, oh, we got to get another storage unit. And then you get another storage unit. And then all of a sudden you got problems. So because you got to pay so much for the storage unit. So it's very much, cancer is a way the body's trying to help us. And one of the most damaging things that conventional medicine does is try to turn it into a war.
Exactly. Make you an enemy of your own body, an enemy of your symptoms. So yeah, that's a fantastic paradigm shift to just see that everything is actually rigged in your favor. It's all working for you, not against you. But it might not like it, right? It doesn't feel good.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Homeostasis. I use that. Well, I use the term homeostasis of like, if you are alive, your body is balancing out things and you are in a state of homeostasis. That's why you're still alive. It is only once you are dead that you are not in a state of homeostasis anymore. The homeostasis has failed and now you're not with us anymore. So yeah, the body is always trying to balance things and, dump things out certain ways. Like if you dump too much toxins out of your skin, you get skin problems because you're pushing it, just like when I was talking about the toxins moving through, let's say the uterus, causing menstrual cramps. Well, and that's how you detox. It has to get there. But if you're pushing toxins out through your skin, they're damaging the skin on the way out. And then they're sitting on your skin, causing damage until you wash them off. And then the example would be like sometimes if people wash their face enough with acne, their acne goes down because they're washing the toxins off their face. It's not about having a clean face. It's about getting those fatty, right? It's oil. It's always oil, right? It's getting those fatty toxins off their face. And on that note, I want to add one more thing. What do people give? So they give Accutane, right? Which is a form of vitamin A, one of the most toxic forms, 13-cis-retinoic acid. They give that for acne, and it's to shut down the sebaceous glands, the oil glands, right? So let's just say if we had an epidemic of vitamin A toxicity in the West, it's going to affect their oil-producing glands, and they're going to tend to have dry skin. Is there a lot of dry skin out there? Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. There's a ton of it. So the very same thing that what Accutane does can be done on a lesser basis, on a slower basis with vitamin A toxicity. So. Right.
I want to follow that up because, menopause is often associated with your body kind of drying up in different ways, especially your skin. So I'd like to talk about that. But before we jump on away from the hormones, there are the herbal versions, not of hormones, but of affecting the hormones. So there's progesterone cream. I've got one right here. And I stopped taking it when I started your protocol. And Vitex used to be my lifesaver. Sorry for the sirens. And, I felt like I could be a happy, normal person if I took my Vitex. I stopped that too, because I'm thinking there's some, like you said, boosting of the system going on. And then like wild yam cream. How do all of those affect women?
Well, I mean, Vitex, they call it chasteberry. They used to give it to monks to basically wreck their libido.
Right.
If you affect fertility negatively, you affect health negatively. So yeah, Vitex is just shutting stuff down.
It's shutting it down. There you go. Oh man, have I taken a lot of that out of my life?
Oh, I even took it. I think I took it in college a couple of times. Because it was like they'll push it in the bodybuilding world as helping. I forget what it helps with. Was it prolactin or something? I don't even remember. I don't care. So progesterone, the biggest thing that women don't realize about progesterone is, first of all, you may want to go Google progesterone toxicity, because it happens. And this extra progesterone that women are taking can be stored in the fat. It is stored. If you're taking more than you need, your body will put it into the fat, and it will come out later. So like if you're out there taking, especially these 100 milligram, 200 milligram bigger doses of like oral progesterone a day, and you're slowly getting more problems over time, you're probably getting progesterone toxic, and then you're going to need to stop it, and your body's going to have to get that stuff out of your body fat over time. And the problem's not just going to go away because you stop taking the progesterone.
Right. Right.
I think I don't remember if I did a show on progesterone, but like as an example, zinc and magnesium are extremely important in progesterone production. And everybody is basically deficient in zinc and magnesium. So we see these, estrogen dominance and progesterone deficiency, and copper's very estrogenic in nature. So I talk about copper toxicity all the time. And yeah, I mean, there's like the lavender, right? There's boys who have developed gynecomastia, or the male breast development, as like teenagers, preteens, from their mother, who would put lavender on them every morning to like calm them down or whatever. The essential oil thing is just the biggest. Ladies, if you're into the essential oils, or guys, you're poisoning yourself. You're poisoning your children. You're poisoning yourself. Essential oils are concentrated plant defense mechanisms. Don't take them orally. If you're putting them on your skin, you are absorbing them. If you're breathing them in, they're going into your lungs and you are absorbing them. That's how they have effects. And there's really not very much good research on us using essential oils like a lot of the people are using them. So, and then you find out that certain essential oils will like dissolve styrofoam cups. And yeah, it gets rough. So I probably messed up my liver for a while. I was taking germanium essential oil. And then I looked at it later and I found out it was actually, if I recall correctly, germanium, the active compounds is like 2 different aldehydes. One of which is citraldehyde, which is directly known to slow down ALDH. And I was like, oh, that's why I started to feel worse and worse as I kept drinking it.
So. Right, exactly. Yeah, we're so addicted to short-term results that it's hard to get past. Yeah. And what about when somebody's been through a hysterectomy? Like you said, the organ that produced the hormones isn't there anymore. You said the adrenals can make up for it. Is there anything more that, if they had to go down that road, or they were tricked into going down that road?
Yeah. I would say that, well, first there would be, if somebody wasn't on hormones yet, then I would say, try our stuff for, a year. If you're willing, give it a chance to see how things are moving. And then you can decide if you want to continue doing it, or like I said, you can always choose to do the hormones. Like if somebody gets on the program and they're like, they want to get off the hormones, or let's say they reduce their thyroid hormone on their own. And then all of a sudden they're like, I don't feel as good as I did with the thyroid hormone. Then I'll say, put it back in. You can always put it back. You can always take it out and put it back.
I always say that about programs. If somebody's worried about letting one go, I'll say, don't worry, I could show you how to put it back later.
Right. See, it's the same thing. I mean, the people who I really vibe with are the people whose the concepts that we use in the different fields are the same. It's just a different field. That's it. So, what was the other thing?
Just about like replacing those hormones, but if they're trying
So if somebody, let's say, wanted to do the program and they were already on hormones, this is a very important thing that I do. First of all, I mean, there's a lot of people who come into the program who want to get off of hormones. They want to be off of them. And I have to remind them that, like, okay, just because you're on the diet or the minerals or whatever, it does not mean that your problems all poof vanished just because you're on what you think is the right program. this is a marathon, not a sprint. We have a lot to unwind and a lot to undo. So what I tell them to do is that we start working on getting you better. And over time, sometimes people will, let's say, I'll give the example of thyroid just because it's the most obvious one. I tell people at the start, if they're on thyroid medication, I say, as we fix things, you're going to potentially end up. So if your level's right here and you're supposed to be up here, as we start fixing things, your natural level is going to come up of thyroid hormone production. Even though you're still on the medication, it will start to come up. But then if this was the medicated you, so this was the normal, this was medicated, and we then bring up your natural thyroid hormone production because your body's healthier, then all of a sudden you're going to be over medicated. And so I tell them to look up, research hyperthyroid symptoms, and I'll ask them, have you ever been on too much thyroid hormone? And a lot of times they'll be like, oh yeah, my doctor gave me too much once. It was awful. I say, remember those symptoms, like write those down, remember them, because as we get you better and you're still on the thyroid hormone, then you may hit those symptoms again. And that is an amazing sign. It means we are restoring your thyroid function. And now you can choose to reduce your thyroid hormone by, I discuss potential amounts with them. And I just tell them, when you're ready, if let's say all of a sudden you start feeling hyperthyroid, you're feeling like your mind is racing and you feel like you're getting hot, flashy, and you're loose bowels, and it's just like everything's running too fast, then you can try taking out some of the thyroid hormone. And within like 2 or 3 days, you will know those symptoms. If they're from too much medication, they will go way down or disappear. And then we can continue going until all of a sudden, maybe they feel those symptoms again, just less because they're on less med now. And then they can do the same thing until they're off. So it's a way of, so with other hormone symptoms, like if somebody was put on, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, or whatever, they could watch the symptoms that they know that those helped with. And then they could also watch for other symptoms to come about. And oftentimes it's an interesting thing, but people will actually many people who are in touch with their intuition will start to get an intuitive hit of their, like, I think I can stop this now. So their body's kind of like, yeah, we don't need this anymore. You could move away from this now. So I just let them. And then people who are working with me or my other practitioners, they can come to the office hours and ask about that stuff. We don't tell people what to do with their medications. They can ask, do you think I'm okay to mess it? And we make sure that people know that if you're on a medication, you're choosing to take the medication and you choose to get off of it if you choose to. The only thing I want people to know is that if there's like a medication where you're supposed to wean off of it, like high blood pressure medications, like you need to wean off of it. And if there's a medication that you can't cut the tablet in half, you don't cut the tablet in half. We got to do something else. And oftentimes people will say sometimes I get people who are like, my doctor's willing to work with me getting me off of this. My doctor doesn't want me on this either. Mm-hmm. And then I'll say, okay, so we'll just go along and I'll, you can talk to your doctor and talk to me and say, I think I'm ready. And I'm like, okay, then go talk to your doctor about it. And they're like, yeah, I was planning on that. And so I can work with any practitioner. It's the other practitioners who don't want to work with me because I'm like, don't take that. That's going against what we're trying to do. It may help your symptoms, but it's going against what you're trying to do, and you get to choose.
Yeah,
and then,
exactly.
We have all of that stuff. So I just remind people, I am trying, the word empowering is thrown around like it's a wasted word these days. But what we're trying to do, both of us, is we are trying to empower people, truly empower them to take control of what they're doing in their lives. And I'm just giving people information. I tell people I'm a guide. Like, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to tell you what you can do and what to watch for, and how then you get to watch the positive responses or the negative responses, and then how to steer around that, because we are trying to customize this whole thing to you and no one else. That's why it's concepts and principles. It's like, if you have zinc deficiency, do you probably need some more zinc? Yeah. Could you do that through food? Sure. Might you need a supplement? Probably. Is your supplement dose going to be the exact same as anybody else's? Maybe not. How fast will you get your deficiency fixed? Depends. A lot of people, when they're very toxic, they don't tolerate zinc very well. And as they get less toxic, oh, there you go. So as they get less toxic, they tolerate it better. Same thing happened with Kelsey. She couldn't take much zinc at the start. It would put her to sleep. And then now she's up to like 20 milligrams a day a lot of days. So 20 milligrams a day is a good dose.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's hopeful. Definitely.
Yeah,
but it would set off a too strong detox in me. I noticed that. Yeah, it was. So yeah, I'm waiting patiently. I am signed up for a consult, as you might know, and it's a little bit slow because our stupid post office is on strike, and we can't do mail. We're driving to the U.S. for the hair test.
Oh wow! To mail it?
It's being mailed to the border, so we're going to drive to get it. Stay in the hotel room to do the hair thing, and we found another reason to go, so it's worth it. But
somebody wanted some magnesium lotion in Canada, and because of all the stuff that's going on right now, Julie tells me, she's like, it was going to be $200 to ship 4 bottles of magnesium lotion.
I know. That's what we're up against right now. So. It's stupid. Yeah, it's putting a lot of money in Amazon's pockets, let's say.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Yeah. If you still have time for more questions, can we keep going? How are you doing?
Oh wow, I got
2 hours. So UTI. Yeah. If you need a break, feel free to let me know. Okay. What about UTIs? Again, it's stupidly common. Infection of the urinary tract system. They inevitably throw antibiotics at it. It seems to have short-term results. It comes back.
Yeah, those darn returning problems that don't seem to go away, right? So what if we want to look at this from a different perspective? I haven't done a UTI episode yet. Maybe I'll have to think about that.
That would be great.
So when you are leaking bile into your bloodstream, right? It's coming back around to your liver eventually. Your liver cleans all your blood all day long. Some of that bile, that toxic bile that has leaked into your bloodstream, is going to your kidneys. Your kidneys are like the second line. Your kidneys don't like bile, but they can process it out and they can put some of it into the urine. So imagine if you were putting something kind of toxic and caustic into your urine, and it feeds certain types of bacteria. And then you're getting an irritated bladder and an irritated urethra, and you're growing bacteria that they're saying are bad, that they're what causes it. Maybe it's not that what causes it. Remember, things cannot grow unless the environment is there for them to grow in.
Exactly.
Like as they say, like if you want to grow something in your garden and it's not growing, the problem is in the soil, most likely. So fix the soil. Like, so if something is growing in your bladder, or something's growing in your gut, or something's growing in your female reproductive system that's not supposed to be there, something has created the environment that is suitable for that to grow. And if we can change the environment back, then we see the problem go away. Oh yeah, the oxalate groups say everything's oxalate dumping. They don't. Yeah, we could go into that. Oxalates can be an issue, but what do we see with the work that we do is we see people becoming less sensitive to oxalates as they go. So that's because people don't realize oxalates go through ALDH. Crazy. And calcium oxalate is what really causes the problem. So once you have oxalate and you bind calcium to it, well, what raises calcium in your system? Vitamin A and vitamin D. So, and we don't take vitamin D supplements, and we minimize vitamin A intake, and then we see, but thank you, Jackie. So yeah, we fix those issues, and then people who are very sensitive to oxalates get less sensitive as they go.
Right.
So then we were talking about the UTIs. So if you're putting a bunch of toxin in your bladder and it's irritating everything, so let's just think back to toxic bile theory, right? If you're putting too much bile in your blood and it's going into your kidneys and into your urine and into your bladder and it's irritating things there, what would be the symptomatic thing we could do to reduce your discomfort? We could give you something like antibiotics. Most pharmaceuticals slow down ALDH, which would then slow down bile production, which would then reduce the toxicity going into your urine in your bladder, and then you get a relief of symptoms. Now, has that antibiotic fixed the toxicity problem or the deficiency problem at all? No. So what happens is eventually your liver recovers and it starts pumping out more bile again. And where does that bile go? Goes right to your kidneys, right to your bladder. You get the same problem again. And eventually it keeps getting worse because every time you slow down detox, the bile is getting more and more toxic in the background because you're not getting rid of it. So you're just accumulating more toxicity. So then, and people will say, oh, I take probiotics for it. Okay. What do probiotics change? People don't realize that the biggest thing that probiotics do is they change your bile. So your liver makes primary bile acids. These are the least harmful. Those go into your intestines where they then encounter your gut biome, your probiotics, and bad biotics. And then those they can change primary bile acids into secondary bile acids and tertiary bile acids. Secondary and tertiary bile acids are the worst ones that you can have. So you could take, let's say, some probiotics and change your gut biome. And this is why if you go and read like Amazon reviews of different probiotic products, make sure to look at the 5-star ones and make sure to look at the 1-star ones, because you'll see people saying this probiotic saved me from years of this problem overnight, practically. And then you look at the 1-stars and there will be people like, this probiotic gave me IBS and it's not going away.
I need to read some reviews.
Because they changed the gut biome and they changed their bile acid recipe. So that's how, like, as an example, probiotics could shift something like right away.
Yep.
It doesn't necessarily get rid of the toxicity that's behind it. It just changed the recipe of the bile acid. But that's how quickly you can improve or worsen things. So yeah, actually, that, to use another example, a person I know had a lot of UTIs recently, and I knew they were going through a lot of detox dumping. I knew they were going through a lot of it. And I was like, she had some symptomatic things that she could do, and I was like, do them and just know that I think it's going to get better. The crazy thing was like a lot of times people in the same family will detox together. And her young daughter was having UTIs also. And we knew that there was nothing else causing them. But they would both kind of flare up around the same time. And it was just it was kind of cool to see like that. I do think however you want to call it, evolutionarily or whatever, I do think we have, how like okay, so if we say that menstrual cycles are a detox, okay, women's cycles sync up the longer they're together.
Right, cooping.
Right, so women sync up their detox cycles. So why can't people who are around each other trigger the other person into going into a detox cycle? I don't see why not. I mean, the other examples I give is why is yawning contagious? Like, we're not spreading anything. It's just you hear or you see somebody yawn close to you and then all of a sudden you're yawning. And why do people if somebody's around them and they throw up, why do we get nauseous and maybe even throw up? I have a theory on that one. It's that the idea is that if you're in a tribe and you guys all eat the same thing, then if one person's getting sick from it, it's safer for you to throw it up early than to leave it in you, because you see them and they're in a bad way and you go, I gotta get this out of me. It's because I mean the thing, oh my gosh, can you imagine in like survival situations where it's like day-to-day survival, and you get, like, I remember reading The Little House on the Prairie where like the whole family got malaria and they were basically all going to die because they're all, they're dehydrated. Like, dehydration will kill you. So all of a sudden you go, well, I'd rather throw this up once and get it out than keep it in and then get, a stomach flu that could kill me due to dehydration. When you think about how easy we have access to water these days and how it wasn't always that way. Like You see how people could die of dehydration from like diarrhea diseases or vomiting diseases very, very quickly.
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah. Good point. Okay, that's really good information. I appreciate that. And then just about urine. First of all, is it? Can't help asking this. Is it yellow because of bile? Because that's a bile color. And also, urine therapy. It has just in the truth world. It has been. Some are so vehemently against it, and others are vehemently for it. There doesn't seem to be anything in between.
So honestly, I don't recall what makes pee yellow. I don't think it's specifically bile.
Okay.
I mean, bile is what makes your poop brown. But we also see people in the program who are pooping out lots of bile, and they'll have green poop, which is a bile color, or they'll have yellowish orangish poop, which is bile and vitamin A. So the thing we don't want to see is like pale tan poop. That's not enough bile in your poop.
That's not enough bile. Okay.
That means the bile is going somewhere else. We don't want that. So anyway, but we fix that over time. I mean, there's not much you can do if that's the way it's coming out. You know, that's the way it's coming out. But I don't want to say the wrong thing about the urine. I don't want to make a guess or any of that stuff. So I'm just going to leave that one.
Yeah.
What was the other question about urine? The urine therapy. Okay.
Drinking your own urine. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things about urine therapy is that it tends to be really big in places like India and other places where people don't eat a lot of muscle meat protein. So your body makes binding proteins. I'm going to use one big example here, like retinol binding protein. Retinol means it's binding to the retinol form of vitamin A. Your body makes a binding protein to protect you from this toxin in your system. Antibodies are binding proteins. They bind to toxins. If you ever want to think of an antibody, just think of antitoxin. That's what they're made for. So retinol binding protein is a type of basically similar enough to an antibody. It's a protein that binds to something to protect you. Okay. In the urine, there is retinol binding protein that often doesn't have retinol bound to it. So to make retinol binding protein, guess what you need in your diet? Protein, right? So if you're not eating muscle meat, you're probably not getting a lot of good protein. So let's just say that, so if you've seen a lot of, let's say an Indian diet, there's dairy, there's butter, there's ghee, there's turmeric, which is another yellow, orangish toxic compound. There's tons of spices. There's tons of these toxic things. A lot of them have a lot of vitamin A. And one of the things you need to protect yourself against vitamin A is you need zinc and enough protein. Where does zinc and protein come together?
Meat.
Muscle meat. Mm-hmm. So if you're not getting that, you're not getting zinc and protein. Zinc and protein are both necessary to make retinol binding protein. So I've gone over this topic before. I had to think about it myself. I was like, why does urine therapy work? And why do I only see it in these places? So if you have somebody who's on a low muscle meat diet, and let's say they're making some retinol binding protein, and it's going out through their urine, and they can recycle it and get some of that back. So basically, they're almost recycling some of the proteins that are in the urine, that then they're empty of vitamin A, and they come in and then they can bind to a vitamin A, and then they start seeing all these, some of these diseases go away. It's simply a disease of a lack of muscle meat. People have no idea how many diseases like beriberi and rickets and all this. It's a meat deficiency. That's really what they have.
Right.
I've gone over this in several live streams. I have a beriberi, a thiamine deficiency live stream, and a rickets live stream where I show that muscle meat is the biggest thing that was lacking. So this is how I think the difference is. This is why, truth time, I tried urine therapy in college, I think it was. And I was like, when I do things, like I believe if something's going to help my health, I can take anything. Like I was making raw liver and frozen blueberry smoothies to choke it down. I'm drinking this like just this giant like sludge of blueberries and having to like suck it out of the cup because it was so thick. It was gross. And I finally, after weeks of doing that, I said, do I feel any better from this? Because I should feel like superhuman. If I'm going to drink this, I better feel something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of thought, I was honest with myself, and I said, I think I actually feel worse. And I stopped it. And after a couple of weeks, I felt better. And that was one of the key steps along the realizing the vitamin A toxicity thing was that. So I did the urine therapy. I mean, it's not exactly pleasant, but, and then I got to the point where I was adding some apple juice to it, and I did it for a little while, and I was like, I don't feel a damn thing. But I was also eating plenty of muscle meat protein. So it's not going to help me like it would help somebody who is basically starving for muscle meat protein.
Right.
So this is how, like, if you saw, I don't know if the communities you might see the urine therapy in, but if you see it in low muscle meat communities, like if you see vegans saying, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing, or you see people in like low muscle meat country consumption places, they're saying this is amazing, it fixes everything. And then you have, people in the West who are going, this doesn't do anything. They can both be right. It's a disease, it's a dietary deficiency that one group is kind of patching.
There you go. Yeah, that's awakening. And do you think there's any harm in it, that it's your secondary, when the liver's overloaded, it goes to the kidneys? And so is there any sense of or chance of retoxing that way?
I mean, yeah, but I think probably for the people who need it, for the people who need it, it can help, but it's not fixing the root cause of it, which again is the dietary deficiency.
Right.
So
Right, exactly. Yeah, I never noticed anything too miraculous. Some energy, and went on and off, and I finally went off, and so anyway,
that happens with a lot of things where people are like that. You do it, and then you go, well, why am I doing this? Like, this isn't doing anything. And then now, that's what a lot of people appreciate about my work is I can bring an explanation of like how it can work for some people and how it doesn't work for like Westerners who eat meat, 1, 2, 3 times a day. It's just, it doesn't help us because we get plenty of protein. And that's what that's really, that's taking a little bit of protein that they have and just recycling it. That's right. That's my theory on it.
Right. There you go. Interesting. Yeah. Well, I've kept you for a long time now. I wonder if we should start to wrap up, and want to make sure you guys visit nutritiondetective.com. The Love Your Liver course is excellent. You get access to it for a year for a small investment. At least I think it's relatively small. And the community is fantastic. I noticed that there's people who've been around for a long time. They've stuck with it. They've come from all kinds of get well quick scams, or whatever you call them. Not all scams. They're honest people thinking they're helping. And, but this is something where when you see long-term results and you see a testimonial, practically every day, and people saying this and that has happened. And then my own observations, that's the ultimate authority, even though there's some up and down around this. First, I'm in my 4th month now of the diet change. Haven't really gone down the supplements. I want to have a consult first and get some actual direction around that. This is something, I thought I would die when I went off vitamin C and all the supplements. I thought, okay, I'm going to take a big risk here. And I didn't die. And my body started to detox better than it had been. I've seen certain things get way better. I thought my hot flashes were gone. I literally could remember as soon as I said that, I got a few, because that's typical how that goes, and remind your body. You've got some skin stuff. When I got pregnant, by the way, all of a sudden, any excess sun I would give me this incredible rash. Mm-hmm. And it happened. I started going for some tanning for replacing the sun, and same thing, like boom. But this time it came up very strong, intense, and then like this, gone. Not the 2 weeks or 3 weeks that rash would have lasted before. So that's super, super good. There's more than enough good evidence in myself and others that I hesitate to recommend. Get to me in 2 years, and then I'll have some real proof and a good testimonial for you as well. Things aren't so bad, but I just feel like, isn't it better to deal with things while they're not bad? that you can, you've got your strength, you've got your wits about you, and everything is easier. So
Yes.
yeah. Anything else you want to share, Garrett, about how to take you up on consultations or anything else? I know you have
Sure.
kind of supplements.
Yeah, as you already went over, the main website is nutritiondetective.com, and most of the things that we do can be found from there. That's where the consultations that you mentioned with, we have 4 practitioners, including myself now, and I've started doing seminars on hair and blood testing, on how to interpret things in the way I do, because I do it like I do most things. I do it very differently than everybody else on the internet. There's also, we do make some of the cleanest supplements out there, and we try to do things very single ingredient generally, so that you can tweak one thing at a time. We don't generally do the kitchen sink things. The closest thing we have is the Keystone Minerals, which is just the 3 major minerals that I like, and in an easy, one pill thing for people who are just like, I'm not going to take 3 pills. So, okay, here's your 1. That's why I did that. Anyway, so we were putting things like in one of our, in the zinc pill that we make, there was, organic brown rice flour and organic extra virgin olive oil, because that's what if I had to use anything in the pills, it's going to be good. Like, I'm not going to just throw wood pulp in there, which is what the cellulose is. So anyway, so there's that. Best place to find me on social media is on Twitter at NutriDetect, NutriDetect. And then a place that a lot of people like to go, this is what got me started on the vitamin A rabbit hole, is Grant Genereux's website. It's Genereux, so it's GGENEREUX.blog. And he has, up at the top menu, it says free ebooks or ebooks. They're free. Go and read those. They're actually it's a very good read. It's his story of how he got better and how he started putting together the evidence that he was basically, he was chronic kidney disease, heading towards kidney failure, and the next step was dialysis. He was totally jaundiced, and he had terrible eczema. And he went and he looked at the foods that tend to trigger eczema. He figured out that 9 out of 10 of them contained vitamin A, and that was the biggest thing that he could find across the list. So he made himself a diet to cut out vitamin A, and all of his problems are gone. And
amazing.
Yeah, so he started that, and then he did the little, I think, the guinea pig or the hamster experiment, just to show that animals, this animal doesn't need it either. So yeah, so that's where I started. I can't recommend the forum there. It's been infiltrated.
I've heard. How sad is that?
The free ebooks are great. And then for people who like our network, the Love Your Liver program is at members.nutrition.com. And that's, wait, did I say members.nutritiondetective.com? Let me say my own site right. members.nutritiondetective.com. And that is where it's what I think social media should be, which is groups of people actually helping each other and providing useful advice to each other. It is a do-it-yourself. The Love Your Liver program is do-it-yourself, but there's over 2,000 people who are members in there. And as you said, Beth, they're very willing to help. And I keep it that way. I will rule that place with an iron fist if there are trolls or people in there who are not being helpful. I don't put up with it. I am very intolerant of people polluting my areas. So it stays nice. It stays very nice. And as you notice, and I don't have to do much in there because people already kind of understand that about me. So, but yeah, that's kind of where we are around the internet. We got a bunch of new products coming out. We're taking up the things that used to be sold in Kelsey's store. We're going to be making most of those. She made some amazing things, and she's not doing her Etsy store anymore. And we're taking up the helm of making her awesome stuff. And yeah, so things are going really well.
That's awesome. Fantastic. Yep. I love Kelsey a lot too. So you can go back and hear the interview first and second, the antidote to the great poisoning. I appreciate you joining me to talk about this, women's health in particular. So that's been very enlightening. And definitely recommend going to check out that course if you want to take more control over your own health and love your liver up. Yeah. It's because it rules. I'll just quickly let people know again that Topher Gardner is on on Thursday talking about spontaneous generation. We probably will find ways to fold in all the principles we're talking about here. That's at 1 o'clock. And I'm going to be doing archetype readings coming up in 2025. So if you'd like to get on my email list now by doing an archetype quiz, you can just visit bethmartins.com, go to any of the links in the show notes here, and that will get you the news about when I start doing that, which is fairly soon. So lots of love. Garrett, thank you so much for all the work you do. I appreciate that a lot. And thanks to everyone who came in the chat. Oh, do you have 10 seconds? I missed one question from Joey about zeolite. And I've had a few people, I think, in your forum recommend zeolite. Are you guys still working on one? I think I heard a while ago.
Yes. Okay. And I think zeolite is going to be very helpful. I think that if you are out there buying any zeolite that is clear, you're getting scammed, because zeolite in water is not clear ever. Okay. So there are shysters out there in the zeolite community. There is a definite use for zeolite. Kelsey will eventually be making her modified zeolite, which is very exciting. And we're working on a zeolite product for the future. So nice. Do I like it? Yes. Does it do many of the things in terms of detoxing that we are trying to do? Yes.
Right. Like charcoal, right? Is it not an alternative to charcoal?
Well, it doesn't have to be an alternative. I actually started using both of them together at the same time. They have different affinities for different things. So, they might both. I mean, I just found a paper on zeolite grabbing onto microplastics. So, they both can. It's just like, like you and your sibling might like the same foods, but you might like different ones the best, and different ones second, and different ones third. So they do attract these things similarly, but they have different preferences for the toxins that they soak up. That's all.
Okay, well, I'll wait to hear more about that.
Charcoal tends to be more constipating too. So
it really is. I can't get along with it.
Zeolite is much less.
Okay, yeah, good to hear. Awesome. Well, thank you once again for coming on. I'm going to play us out. That's my son, Liam Martins, playing the guitar on the way in and the way out. And I hope you guys have a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you once again, Garrett.
You're welcome.
Okay. Bye for now.
Bye.